No, that can't be. My son is in Dubai. You must have the wrong person. The young delivery man glanced nervously over his shoulder before meeting my eyes. No, ma'am. Mason Carter never left Oregon. I stood frozen in the doorway, my hands trembling as I clutched the brown paper parcel he had just placed in them. His words echoed inside me like thunder in a canyon. He walked away quickly, his head down, leaving tire tracks in the fresh frost of my driveway. I didn't move. My eyes were locked on the package. It had no return address, only my name, Martha Carter, and my home here in Eugene, Oregon. But what chilled me wasn't the lack of sender. It was the recipient's name beneath mine, written in blocky ink. Mason Carter, my son. For 3 years, I had told everyone, neighbors, church friends, even myself, that Mason was working overseas, Dubai. I'd say with a practiced smile. A big consulting job, long hours, different time zones. That's what his wife, Talia, told me. And I believed her, because believing was easier than admitting something might be terribly wrong. I carried the package inside and sat at the oak kitchen table, the one my husband built with his own hands decades ago. Mason learned his multiplication tables at that table. He proposed to Talia there, nervously twisting his napkin while she cried and laughed at the same time. After my husband died, that table became too quiet, but I still sat there every morning, drinking coffee and pretending life hadn't hollowed out. My hands shook as I opened the package. Inside was a photograph, a flash drive, and a plain envelope with no return address. The photograph stole my breath. It was grainy, taken through glass, but I would have recognized my son anywhere. Mason looked thinner than I had ever seen him, his face pale, his shoulders slumped. He sat on a plastic chair in a stark white room. A nurse stood nearby, clipboard in hand, not even looking at him. Mason was staring toward the camera, and in his eyes was something that made my stomach drop: fear. Raw, unfiltered fear. This was not a man building a career in Dubai. This was my son, trapped. I plugged the flash drive into my laptop with fingers that barely obeyed me. One video file appeared. I clicked play. The screen flickered. Mason sat in the same room, his movements slow, his voice thick. "Mason Carter," he said when someone off camera asked his name. The video cut. Another clip. His eyes were clearer this time. "I want to go home." Another cut. His voice broke. "I'm not crazy. Please, tell my mom." I pressed my hand over my mouth, but the sound still escaped, a broken animal sob I didn't recognize as my own. Tears blurred the screen, but I didn't wipe them away. I couldn't. Everything inside me was collapsing at once. I grabbed my phone and called Talia. She answered on the third ring. "Martha," she said, her voice sugary and calm. "Is everything okay?" "Where is my son?" I asked. My voice was shaking now. I didn't bother hiding it. There was a pause, just long enough to feel intentional. "We've been over this," she said. "He's in Dubai. Why are you doing this again?" "I have a video of him," I said. "He's in a facility, here, in Oregon." She laughed, actually laughed. "Oh my God," she said. "This is exactly what I was afraid of." "What does that mean?" I whispered. "It means you're confused," she snapped. "You're old, Martha. You forget things. You imagine problems that aren't there. I told Mason this would happen." My chest tightened. "Don't talk to me like that. I'm his mother." "You're an obstacle," she shot back. "And if you keep this up, I will make sure you never see him again." I felt the words hit me like slaps. "You can't do that." "I can," she said coldly. "And don't forget who's been helping you every month since my husband left. The money stops if you keep asking questions. No visits, no calls, nothing." I started to cry then, deep, racking sobs I couldn't control. "Why are you doing this?" I begged. "What did I ever do to you?" "You're pathetic," Talia said, "crying like this at your age. Honestly, Mason would be ashamed if he could see you." The line went dead. I dropped the phone onto the table and pressed my forehead against the wood. My body shook as the truth sank in. I hadn't just been lied to. I had been manipulated, threatened, humiliated. The woman I trusted with my son's life had turned on me without hesitation. I cried until my chest ached, until my eyes burned. I cried for Mason. I cried for myself. I cried because I realized how completely I had been betrayed. When the tears finally slowed, Something else took their place. Clarity. I wiped my face and sat up straight. I replayed the video again, watching my son's eyes, the way they searched the camera. He hadn't given up. He was waiting for me. I noticed something I hadn't before: the name stitched onto the pocket of his scrubs. Ridgefield Behavioral Health Center. I typed it into my phone. My breath caught when the map appeared. 8 miles from my house. 8 miles. For 3 years. I stood, pulled on my coat, and grabbed my keys. My hands were still shaking, but my resolve was solidifying with every breath. Talia thought I was weak. She thought my age made me powerless. She was wrong. I was a mother, and I was coming for my son. If this story touched your heart, give it a like and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. You might find someone closer than you think. I didn't sleep that night. After the call with Talia, after her voice poisoned the air with threats and insults, I sat in the dark, staring at the photo of Mason. The weight of those words, "You're old, you're confused, you're pathetic," hung over me like smoke. But beneath the sting, something solid had formed, a knowing, a conviction. She was hiding him, and I was going to find out why. By sunrise, I had made coffee strong enough to strip paint, slipped on my thickest coat, and printed out the directions to Ridgefield Behavioral Health Center. I told no one, not the neighbors, not my sister in Ohio. I needed to see it with my own eyes first. Ridgefield sat just beyond the edge of Eugene, tucked behind a long stretch of evergreen trees and gravel roads. It didn't look like a hospital, not in the way I imagined one should. It looked like a converted school building. The parking lot was nearly empty. A tall black gate circled the property. 2 cameras panned slowly back and forth near the entrance. I parked a block away and approached on foot. At the front gate, I buzzed in and waited. A tinny voice crackled through the intercom. "Yes, I'm here to inquire about a relative," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I believe he's a patient here. Mason Carter, Access. Do you have an appointment?" "No," I replied, then added quickly, "I wasn't told I needed one." There was a pause, then a click. The gate didn't open. Instead, a tall man in a gray security uniform stepped out from behind the main door and began walking toward me. He was polite but distant. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but we can't disclose any information about patients unless you're listed as their primary contact or legal guardian." I forced a smile. "I'm his mother." He didn't flinch. "That may be, but without authorization, I can't even confirm if he's here." I wanted to scream. Instead, I nodded slowly. "Understood." He walked me back to the sidewalk, then returned to the building without another word. I stood there, the cold biting through my coat, my breath turning to fog. They knew. They were protecting her. Or maybe worse, they were part of it. I drove home in silence. No radio, no distractions. Just the low hum of the engine and the sound of my heart pounding in my ears. Back at home, I dug through the drawer where I kept every piece of mail Mason ever sent me. Postcards, emails I had printed out, birthday cards. My hands worked with desperate focus, sorting them into piles, flipping them over, examining postmarks and handwriting. Something I'd ignored for years suddenly screamed for attention. The last postcard he supposedly sent from Dubai had a U.S. postage stamp. Another card from Qatar had been mailed from Denver, Colorado. Why hadn't I seen it? Why had I swallowed every excuse? I could hear her voice again. "You're confused. Mason's fine. You're being dramatic." But now, I was finally listening to the voice that mattered my own. I turned back to the emails, reopening them on my old laptop. They were cold, clinical, like a stranger had written them. The signature line had a logo from a firm Mason never once mentioned to me. I Googled it. No such company existed. She faked everything. The next morning, I called Talia again. She didn't answer. I called again. And again. Finally, she picked up on the 4th try. "What do you want now?" she snapped, not even trying to hide her irritation. "You forged emails," I said. "You mailed postcards from Denver and told me they came from the Middle East. You've been lying about Mason since the day he disappeared." Silence. "I went to Ridgefield," I continued. "They didn't let me in, but I know he's there. I saw the uniform in the video. I saw his eyes. He's not in Dubai. He's down the road, and you're the one keeping him there." When she spoke again, her voice was like ice. "You're going to make a mess for yourself, Martha. You don't want to do this." "I already did." She scoffed. "Fine, dig. Knock yourself out. But let me be clear, if you take this further, I'll cut off every cent you receive. And Mason? He'll never see you again." I didn't respond. I just ended the call. Then I sat on the floor of the living room, surrounded by scraps of truth postcards, emails, photos, and let the full weight of her betrayal settle over me. Mason's wife, the woman I once called daughter, had created an entire illusion to erase him from my life, to isolate him, control him, and for years I let her. But not anymore. That night, I stayed up researching legal guardianship laws in Oregon. I found names of elder law attorneys. I wrote down the address of a private investigator's office on Oak Street. I wasn't sure what came next, but I knew this: the first lie had unraveled, and with it, the rest would follow. I wasn't confused. I was finally wide awake. The mind has a cruel way of replaying things you should have noticed sooner. That night, after hours of staring at the ceiling, I pulled out the old photo albums. The air was still, save for the soft ticking of the kitchen clock. I spread the albums out across the living room floor, one by one, letting the images take me backward before the silence, before the lies. There was Mason, no older than 7, beaming with chocolate on his chin after a failed attempt at baking. There he was at his high school graduation, arms draped over his father's shoulders, his tie slightly crooked, his smile unforced and easy. He used to smile like that all the time, at least until Talia came into the picture. She wasn't cruel in the beginning. That's the part that haunts me now, how charming she was, all big brown eyes and soft-spoken words. She called me Mom before they even got engaged. She brought flowers on my birthday, offered to help wash dishes after dinner. I thought she was the daughter I never had, but it changed. I remember the first Thanksgiving after their wedding. Mason arrived late, his expression tight. Talia was chipper, almost too chipper, and kept interrupting whenever Mason tried to speak. I had made his favorite roasted sweet potatoes with maple glaze, but he barely touched his plate. When I asked if everything was okay, he just nodded, eyes on his food. "Work's been crazy," he said. "Travel's coming up." That was the first time Dubai was mentioned. I should have asked more questions. I remember how the phone calls slowed after that. He'd call once a week, then once a month, then not at all. Every time I reached out, Talia would answer instead. "Oh, he's asleep. Oh, he's in a meeting. He'll call you soon." He never did, and I let it happen. I told myself he was just busy, that he was building something for their future. But deep down, some part of me knew that wasn't the whole story. I could hear it in his voice the last time we spoke. That call played on a loop in my head. "Hi, Mom," he had said, his voice hoarse. "You sound tired," I told him. There was a pause. "Yeah, it's been a lot." I asked if he was happy. He didn't answer right away. Then, "I miss how things used to be." Before I could press further, Talia's voice came through the background. "Mason, we're late, come on." "I have to go," he said. "Love you." That was it. That was the last time I heard his voice. Now, knowing what I know, I think that was his call for help. Subtle, wrapped in guilt, buried beneath fear. And I missed it. I didn't push. I didn't question. I nodded along and went back to my quiet house and my crossword puzzles and let my son disappear. I curled up in my armchair, holding one of Mason's childhood drawings, a stick-figure family standing under a bright orange sun. I used to keep it on the fridge. He had labeled us all Dad, me, and Mommy, written in crooked letters. That little boy trusted me to protect him. And now, here I was, trying to undo 3 years of silence. By the next morning, I had a list of names: elder law attorneys, mental health advocates, private investigators. I called 6 before one answered. "Dana Cruz, Investigations." "Dana speaking," came the voice on the other end. Low, direct, no nonsense. "I need to find my son," I said, surprised at how strong I sounded. "He's being kept somewhere against his will. I have evidence. I just need someone who can help me put the pieces together." There was a long pause. "Start from the beginning," she said. So I did. I told her everything. The emails, the photo, the flash drive, the call with Talia. She didn't interrupt once. When I finished, there was another long silence. "What's your name?" she asked. "Martha Carter." I know Ridgefield, she said. They've got a reputation. Quiet, expensive, hard to get in or out unless someone wants you there. My chest tightened. So it's possible. Oh, it's more than possible. It's common. It's Telfine. She gave me an address and told me to meet her the next afternoon. As I hung up, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Not hope, exactly, but direction. And that was enough to stand on. The small office smelled like old coffee and worn-out leather. Folders were stacked high on every surface, and a fading American flag hung behind the desk. A single photo frame sat in the corner. Dana, younger, dressed in uniform, shaking hands with a mayor I vaguely recognized. She didn't smile when I walked in, but she did stand up. "You're Martha," she said, shaking my hand with a firm grip. "Take a seat." Dana Cruz was in her late 50s, with cropped, gray-streaked hair and eyes that didn't miss a thing. She wore jeans and a leather jacket, and when she moved, it was with a kind of measured precision, like someone who'd seen too much to waste time. I handed her the envelope, the photo, the flash drive. She didn't speak for several minutes, just watched the video in silence. I sat there, heart pounding, as Mason's voice echoed softly from the laptop. "I want to go home." Dana paused the video and looked up. "This your son?" "Yes." "And the woman Talia, she's got power of attorney?" "She said she did. I never saw the papers, but she controls everything." Dana exhaled sharply through her nose and leaned back in her chair. "I've worked 3 cases like this in the last 2 years, she said. All of them the same setup. Spouse or relative claims mental illness, gets power of attorney, ships the person off to a private facility that doesn't ask questions as long as the check's clear. I felt sick, she continued. These places thrive on silence. They're protected by privacy laws, medical red tape, and fear. Families don't ask questions, or if they do, they get brushed off like you were. But how can she just do this to him? I asked, voice cracking. He's not crazy. Abscess. Dana gave me a long look. No, he's not. But the second someone files the right paperwork, pays the right doctor, and plays the system right, truth doesn't matter. Legality becomes paperwork. And Mason? He becomes a signature. I stared at her, absorbing the weight of it all. You said you had other cases like this, I whispered. Were they able to get out? She nodded slowly. 2 are free. 1 didn't make it. That last part hit me like a punch to the chest. Dana didn't sugarcoat things. She wasn't a hand-holder, and I respected that, but it also scared me. What do we do now? I asked. She pulled a notebook from her desk. First, we verify Mason is actually inside Ridgefield. I've got a guy who used to do maintenance there. If he's still on the inside, he can help us confirm. And if he is? Then we build a case. Quietly, carefully. We don't go knocking on doors or screaming outside the gates, Talia. Sounds like someone who'd burn the house down before she gives up control. I nodded, throat dry. She's got access to his finances, right? Dana asked. Yes. Any chance there's a trust fund, inheritance, something she might be after? My heart skipped. Mason's father, my husband, left a sizable fund. Mason was supposed to take full control when he turned 35. That was 2 years ago. Dana arched an eyebrow. Well, there's your motive. I felt dizzy. You think she's doing this for the money? I think she's doing it for power, Dana said. Money's just the tool. She stood and walked over to a filing cabinet, pulled out a thin folder, and set it in front of me. Inside were court forms, medical affidavits, and surveillance photos from a case she'd worked last year. A man in his 40s, locked away in a similar facility, had been rescued by his sister after 6 months of building evidence. It takes time, she said. You need to be ready for that, and you need to be smart. I'm ready, I said without hesitation. Dana studied me for a long moment. Then she nodded. Good, because once we start digging, there's no going back. Something in her tone made my skin prickle. You think Talia will fight back? She already has, Dana said, matter of fact. She's got you isolated, cut off, painted you as senile. Probably told everyone Mason's mom's losing it. That's how they work. I have not depenutel-usered. Tears burned behind my eyes. She told me I was pathetic. Dana's expression softened just a touch. You're not. You're a mother who still hears her son's voice when everyone else stopped listening. That's not pathetic. That's power. For a long moment, I couldn't speak. She handed me a fresh tissue, and I held it in both hands like it was something sacred. Then Dana pulled out a folder marked confidential and slid it toward me. "We start tonight. You're going to help me map out every detail you remember about the last 3 years. Every letter, every missed call, every strange thing she ever said. You have something most people don't in cases like this." "What's that?" I asked. "A paper trail," she said, "and a gut that never stopped knowing the truth." I left her office just after sundown. The air had shifted. It wasn't lighter, not yet, but it wasn't as heavy as before. I had an ally now, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. "Start at the beginning," Dana said, her pen ready, her eyes locked on mine. I had brought every postcard, every printed email, every bank receipt and birthday card I could find. They were laid out across Dana's long desk like forensic evidence because that's exactly what they were. For the next 3 hours, I told her everything. I described the first day Mason said he was going abroad, the last real phone call we had, how Talia slowly took over communication, how the tone of the emails changed. Dana asked sharp questions, sometimes doubling back. "When did you stop getting calls from Mason directly?" "About a month after the Dubai assignment," I said. "It was all Talia after that." "And you never heard his voice again?" "Only in that video." Dana nodded grimly. "She ghosted him out of your life." I have to divin it down. By nightfall, she had built a full timeline, and in that web of dates and silences, a new pattern started to emerge. "She cut you off," Dana said, deliberately. "Not just from Mason, but from any documentation that might challenge her version of reality." "What does that mean?" "It means she didn't want you as a witness." That chilled me. She didn't just want Mason under control. She wanted me neutralized, discredited, isolated, made irrelevant. I felt a familiar heat rise in my throat, a mix of guilt and fury. And I let her. "Dana didn't coddle. You trusted her. That's not weakness. That's what they exploit." Her phone buzzed. She picked it up, then gave me a look. "You might want to hear this." She put the call on speaker. "This is Elsie," said the voice on the other end, female, cautious but not unfriendly. "She's a nurse who used to work at Ridgefield," Dana said to me. Then to the phone. "You said you had something?" The woman hesitated. "I remember the patient, Mason Carter. Came in about 3 years ago, right after I got there. Handsome, tall, but sedated all the time. Never spoke much. We weren't allowed to talk to him unless instructed." I felt sick. Why not? He was under a restricted contact order. Only his guardian could approve visitors. That's unusual. Normally, next of kin like parents are on the approved list by default. But with him, it was sealed tight. Only the wife. Dana's eyes sharpened. "Was he violent? Unstable?" "No," Elsie said flatly. "That's the thing. He was quiet, withdrawn, seemed more confused than anything. Sometimes he'd mutter things, 'This isn't right,' or 'Tell my mom.' That's what I remember most. He always said, 'Tell my mom.'" My breath caught. I felt tears build, but I blinked them away. "Why are you telling us this now?" Dana asked. "I quit 2 months ago," Elsie said. "Place gave me the creeps, and when I saw your inquiry, I remembered his name. I never forgot his face." Dana thanked her and ended the call. The silence that followed was heavy. "She kept him drugged," I whispered. "She kept him locked away and drugged." Dana nodded. "And she had help." I stared at her. Who would help her do something like that? Dana reached into a folder and pulled out a business card. "Dr. Kenneth Hayworth, private psychiatrist. I've seen his name before. He's a favorite among families looking to fast-track power of attorney claims." "Are you saying—" He might have signed off on Mason's mental evaluation, which would make him legally incompetent, and hand everything over to Talia. "But Mason's not sick." "Exactly. But if the paperwork says otherwise, the court doesn't know that. All it takes is one shady diagnosis, a rushed hearing, and boom, he's out of the picture." I felt the floor tilt beneath me. "Is that even legal?" Dana gave a tired smile. "Legal? Not quite. But it's done in the shadows all the time, especially when there's money involved." My heart pounded in my ears. "So what do we do?" "We find the original court filings. If Talia declared Mason incompetent, there's a paper trail. We just have to track it down." "But won't she be watching? I mean, after the call, she must know I'm not backing down." "She'll be watching," Dana said. "Which is why we're going to do this the smart way. Quiet. No more calls. No more visits. From here on out, it's silence. We play their game, but better." I nodded. I was scared. Of course I was. But under the fear, something was rising in me, a fire I hadn't felt in years. Mason had trusted me once to keep him safe. I had failed him. Now I would move mountains to undo that mistake. That night, I didn't cry. I made a list of every person who had ever called me too emotional or overreacting or crazy for trusting my instincts, and I drew a line through every single name. The courthouse smelled like lemon floor cleaner and bureaucracy. Dana and I entered through the main doors of the Lane County Courthouse just after 9 a.m. She wore a dark coat and carried a leather folder under her arm. I followed close, nerves tightening around my ribs like a corset. I'd only ever been in this building once before to file my husband's death certificate. At the records window, Dana leaned in. "We're looking for any guardianship filings related to Mason Carter. Between 2023 and now." The clerk, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and thick glasses, blinked at her. "Do you have a case number?" "No," Dana said calmly. "Just a name and a time frame." The clerk sighed but began typing. I held my breath. After a few minutes, she said, "There's a sealed case. Opened March 2023, closed April the same year. Petitioner listed as Talia Carter." My heart nearly stopped. Dana didn't flinch. "Can we see the file?" "It's sealed," the clerk said. "Only parties listed on the case or with a court order can access it." Dana pulled a business card from her coat and slid it across the counter. "Private investigator. Working with the subject's biological mother. We're willing to file for review." "Subscribe to the Brog." The woman studied her for a moment, then sighed again. "You didn't hear this from me," she muttered, scribbling something on a sticky note. "Go down the hall to room 3C. Ask for Assistant Clerk Jenkins. He's got more flexibility." Room 3C was cramped and lined with old filing cabinets. Mr. Jenkins was younger, maybe mid-30s, with a tired look and coffee stains on his shirt. Dana explained our situation again, this time with a little more edge in her voice. He raised an eyebrow. "You're saying someone forged court documents to obtain power of attorney?" "We're saying we have reason to believe the court was misled," Dana corrected. "And we're asking for eyes on the file, not to take anything, just to verify facts." Jenkins hesitated, then opened a drawer and pulled out a slim red folder marked Carter, Mason, Emergency Guardianship. He glanced over his shoulder, then laid it on the desk. "What you do with what you read is up to you," he said quietly. Dana opened the folder. Inside was a declaration from Talia. She claimed Mason had exhibited violent and erratic behavior, had been unwilling to seek help, and had become a danger to himself and others. It included a single-page psychiatric evaluation from Dr. Kenneth Hayworth, diagnosing Mason with schizoaffective disorder based on a 2-hour session. There was also a sworn statement. From me. My mouth fell open as Dana slid the page toward me. "I, Martha Carter, mother of Mason Carter, support the petition for guardianship and confirm the behavioral instability described herein." I gasped. "I never said this. I never wrote this." Dana nodded. "It's fabricated. Or forged." My signature was at the bottom. It looked like mine, but I'd never signed anything of the sort. "She lied to the court," I whispered. "She used my name. She made me part of it." Dana's jaw tightened. "This is the break we needed. We've got a sealed proceeding, a shady doctor, and now a falsified affidavit." Mr. Jenkins cleared his throat. "Technically, I'm not supposed to say this, but you have grounds to challenge this. That document alone is a red flag." My hands were shaking as I took a photo of the affidavit with Dana's phone. "We can't remove the file," she said, "but we've got enough to build a formal challenge." As we left the courthouse, the weight of it all pressed down hard on my shoulders. But beneath it, there was something else. Rage. Not the kind that makes you scream, but the cold, clear kind. The kind that makes you plan. She used my name. She turned my love into a weapon against my son. She made me complicit in his erasure. But now I had proof, and I was going to use it. Back in Dana's office, I couldn't stop staring at the photo of the affidavit. My name, my signature so convincingly forged that I could almost believe I had signed it in my sleep. But I hadn't. I would have remembered betraying my son. Dana laid out our next steps with the kind of focus that reminded me of a military commander before battle. "We file an emergency motion to challenge the guardianship," she said, ticking items off her list. "We include the affidavit, the false psychiatric report, and your video evidence. But Martha," she paused. "What?" "This moves us into open conflict," she said. "Once that motion is filed, Talia will know we're building a case. She may retaliate. She may try to move Mason. Or worse, have him declared permanently unfit before we can reach him." I swallowed hard. "So what do we do?" "We stall. Keep her thinking you've backed off while we do one more thing." "What?" "We find someone who's seen Mason recently. Someone she can't erase." Dana made a few calls, pulled some strings. A few hours later, we were sitting in a diner on the outskirts of town across from a man named Trevor Miller. He was in his late 20s, rail-thin, with a nervous energy that made his hands twitch every few seconds. His eyes flicked from side to side like he was always checking for exits. But when he looked at me, there was something else recognition. "I remember him," he said softly. "Mason. We were in Group D together." "Group D?" Dana asked. "Low risk, long-term patients," Trevor explained. "He didn't belong there. None of us did, really. But him? He barely spoke. Always sat by the window, looking like he was waiting for someone." I leaned in. "Did he ever mention his mother?" Trevor nodded. "All the time. Said she'd come, that she wouldn't believe the lies." Tears sprang to my eyes. "They kept him medicated," Trevor said. "But sometimes, at night, when it wore off a little, he'd talk more. He said his wife had tricked him into a doctor visit, that he thought it was couples counseling. Next thing he knew, he was in a van." End quote. Dana swore under her breath. "They made it sound like he was delusional," Trevor continued. "But he remembered everything. Names, dates, songs. That man wasn't sick. He was stuck." "Do you remember anything else?" I asked. Trevor's eyes darkened. "They punished him for talking to me. Moved him to isolation after 3 weeks. I didn't see him again." My hands clenched. "And they called that therapy." "They call it compliance," Trevor said bitterly. "That place breaks people." But Mason didn't break. He just got quiet. I reached across the table and gripped his hand. "Thank you," I whispered. "You've done more for my son than most." He gave a faint, sad smile. "I just wish I could have done more." Dana walked him to his car afterward, giving him cash for a bus ticket and a burner phone in case they needed to contact him again. When she returned, she looked tired but satisfied. "That was gold," she said. "An eyewitness, first-person testimony. They'll try to discredit him, but we've got him on record." I stared out the window. The rain had started again, Oregon's quiet percussion. "You okay?" Dana asked. "No," I said honestly, "but I'm getting there." We drove back in silence. That night, I sat alone in my kitchen and wrote Mason a letter. I didn't know if he would ever read it, but I needed to say the words out loud. "Dear son, I'm sorry it took me this long. I'm sorry I doubted my gut. I'm sorry I believed someone else's version of you over the one I raised. But I'm here now, and I won't stop. I promise you, I will not stop. Love, Mom. 30 days. That's what the judge gave us after Dana filed the emergency motion. 30 days to prove Mason wasn't mentally ill. 30 days to prove I hadn't betrayed my son. 30 days to dismantle 3 years of lies. The motion had been submitted with everything: the falsified affidavit, the questionable psychiatric report, the testimony from Trevor, and a detailed declaration from me, under oath. Dana's affidavit laid out the investigative trail: how Ridgefield denied contact, how the emails had inconsistencies, how a sealed case had conveniently slipped past review. We filed it under Oregon Revised Statute 125.65 Emergency Review of Protective Proceedings. The court accepted. That alone was a win. But war has a way of responding fast. Within 48 hours, Talia's counterattack came like a whip crack. First, her lawyer, Sylvia Dobbins. Sleek, expensive, the kind of attorney who wore power like a second skin and smiled like she'd already won. She filed a public response calling the motion a malicious act by a mentally deteriorating parent and claimed I was exhibiting signs of paranoia and obsessive delusion. She included 2 letters from doctors I'd never met, citing my declining cognitive function and erratic behavior. "She's building a defense around you being unfit," Dana said. "It's predictable and cruel." "But it's working," I whispered. "People will believe her." "That's why we don't play defense," Dana replied. "We keep pressing." But then came the bank call. "Mrs. Carter," said the voice on the line, "we're contacting you regarding unusual activity on your checking account. It appears several transactions were flagged as suspicious, and—" "I haven't made any transactions," I said, confused. "That's the issue," she replied. "All your online access has been locked. Additionally, there's been a recent request for financial guardianship pending verification." My breath froze. Someone had tried to place me under financial control. Talia. I could feel it. "She's trying to have me declared incompetent too," I said to Dana later that day, voice shaking. "She's not just trying to silence me, she wants to erase me, like she did Mason." "She's panicking," Dana said. "She's trying to shut you down before the court date." I sat in the silence of my living room, surrounded by letters, affidavits, legal codes. It felt like standing in a storm, with no shelter. But this time, I wasn't crumbling. "She thinks I'll fold," I said. "But you won't," Dana replied. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called the local radio station. It was an AM station that ran nightly Community Voices segments, 10-minute spots for callers to speak freely on any topic. When the host answered, I cleared my throat and gave my name. "Tonight," I said, "I want to talk about guardianship abuse." And I told my story without names, without slander, but with truth. How a mother lost her son not to death, but to paperwork. How silence becomes prison. How love can be weaponized by the wrong hands. The phone lit up with responses. Listeners shared stories. Others cried. Some just listened. I wasn't alone anymore. Neither was Mason. The next morning, Dana called me with a quiet fire in her voice. "Judge Hamlin has agreed to a pre-hearing review. We'll be presenting evidence in chambers next Friday. If we're persuasive, he'll order a court-appointed investigator to visit Ridgefield unannounced." I exhaled. "Then we have 1 week. 1 week to make it impossible for him to ignore the truth," Dana said. 1 week. For the first time since all this began, I felt the scales begin to shift. Talia may have started the game, but I was learning how to finish it. It was a little after 7 p.m. when the knock came. 3 sharp raps on my front door. Not urgent, but deliberate. I wasn't expecting anyone. Dana never came unannounced. I hesitated. My hand hovered over the knob. When I opened it, a man stood on the porch. Late 40s, dark coat, clean-shaven, polite smile. Not quite a salesman. Not quite a neighbor. "Evening, ma'am," he said. "Sorry to bother. I'm a friend of Talia's. Thought I'd stop by check in." Every instinct in me went rigid. "She didn't mention you," I said slowly. He smiled wider. "We go back. Just wanted to see how you were doing with all this legal business. Must be a lot to handle at your age." There it was. That tone, like I was made of dust and dementia. I didn't answer. He stepped slightly closer. "Just trying to help keep things peaceful. Maybe rethink how far you want to take all this. Court stuff can get real messy. Bad for everyone." I shut the door without another word. Locked it. Deadbolted it. Then I called Dana. She picked up on the second ring. "Someone just came to my house," I said. "Said he was a friend of Talia's." "Describe him." I did. There was a pause. "His name is Philip Rhodes," Dana said. "Private consultant. He worked security detail for Talia's old firm. He's not a lawyer, Martha. He's muscle." Quiet pressure. "He threatened me." "No," Dana corrected. "He tested you. He was gauging how scared you are." I clenched my fist around the phone. "Then let him report back. Let her know I'm not scared. I'm angry." Dana's voice softened. "Good, but we increase security. From now on, no answering the door alone. You hear me?" I did. But I didn't like what it meant. We weren't just uncovering truth anymore. We were trespassing into something darker, something protected. But light doesn't ask permission to shine. It just breaks through. 2 days later, Dana called with news. "The judge approved our request," she said. "He's sending a court investigator to Ridgefield. No warning, no scheduling. They'll walk in, ask for Mason, and demand to see his living conditions." I closed my eyes, breathing deeply. Do we know when? This week. That's all they'll say. For safety. Safety. I never thought I'd need to feel safe just to see my own son. That night, I found myself sitting by the window, watching the streetlights flicker on. My hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from something older, deeper. Resolve. I went to the cabinet in the hallway, pulled down the fireproof box I hadn't touched in years. Inside were Mason's birth certificate, his school awards, his father's will, the original trust document, legal roots of a life she thought she could cut off. I laid them out on the dining table, one by one. Proof of who he is. Proof of who I am. She had tried to erase me. But some things are written in ink no amount of silence can wash away. He said my name? I could barely breathe. Dana held the phone tighter, her expression grim but alive with fire. Yes, the investigator said as soon as they introduced themselves. Mason looked up and said, "My mother's name is Martha Carter. She's trying to find me. Please help her." Tears broke like a dam behind my eyes. 3 years. 3 years of silence. Of blank stares and photos. Of emails answered by someone else. Of being told I was irrelevant, forgettable, senile, and my son remembered me. "I need to see him," I whispered. Dana nodded, her voice steady but low. "We're almost there. The court investigator filed their initial report today. You want to hear what it says?" I nodded, still wiping tears from my cheeks. Dana read from her laptop. Patient identified as Mason Carter, 38 years old. No outward signs of active psychosis. No aggressive behavior witnessed during interview. Composed, aware of surroundings, expresses strong desire to contact biological mother. Requests a full reevaluation of current guardianship status. "That's enough to reopen the case, isn't it?" I asked. "It's enough to burn her lies to the ground," Dana said. The report also noted several red flags: overmedication inconsistent with diagnosis, excessive staff restrictions on visitation, and lack of recent psychiatric reevaluation. Mason hadn't been seen by an independent doctor in over 2 years. All assessments were made by Dr. Hayworth, the same man who wrote the original diagnosis. "And that man's days are numbered," Dana muttered. But with the news came danger. Talia had resources, lawyers, influence. If she sensed the ground slipping, she could pull Mason out of Ridgefield, vanish him again, and this time he might not resurface. "We need a court order preventing any transfer," Dana said. "Emergency injunction. I'm drafting it now." "I'll sign whatever I have to," I said. "Right now." "I figured," she smiled. That night I sat on the porch with a cup of chamomile tea, Mason's favorite when he was little. He used to pretend he was British, sip it with his pinky out, say things like, "Quite delightful, Mother." It felt like yesterday, and 1,000 years ago at once. He was alive. He was aware. He was waiting. As I watched the stars emerge over the Oregon sky, I whispered the promise I'd made over and over in my heart. "I'm coming, baby. Just hold on a little longer." The wheels of justice were moving, slower than they should. But finally, they were turning in our direction. The headlines hit like a hammer. Wife of tech executive speaks out. Husband's estranged mother launches dangerous legal attack. Below it, a photo of Talia smiling softly, flanked by Sylvia Dobbins and Dr. Kenneth Hayworth, framed in calm colors. Beneath that, a grainy picture of me mid-blink, unflattering, captioned, "Former librarian Martha Carter claims son is being held hostage." They made me look unhinged. "She played it perfectly," Dana said, scrolling through the press release. "Got ahead of the story, controlled the narrative. Classic crisis strategy." The press conference clip was even worse. "My husband has suffered for years," Talia said, blinking as if holding back tears. "We tried everything: therapy, distance, rest. But his condition worsened, and now, someone he loved is exploiting his illness for attention." Then Hayworth stepped up, citing phrases like psychotic episodes, childhood trauma, and maternal emotional abuse. With Create, "I never hurt my son," I whispered. Dana didn't look up. "You don't have to convince me, but they're not talking to you. They're talking to the court of public opinion, trying to poison the well before trial." My phone buzzed nonstop that day. Friends, acquaintances, old churchwomen who'd once hugged me in pews now asking, "Is it true?" Some didn't call. They just stopped waving, stopped looking me in the eye. "I can't survive this again," I said to Dana that night. "Not like this. It's a very 4. "You won't have to," she said. "You're not alone this time." She handed me a small flash drive. "I found something." "What is it?" "A voicemail from 2 years ago. Mason left it on a backup line for his father's attorney. It was never deleted." She clicked play. "Hey, it's Mason. If you get this, I need advice. Talia's, it's getting bad. She's not violent, but manipulative, controlling. I can't even open a bank statement without her approval. I think she's planning something. Please don't tell her I called. I need a way out that doesn't start a war." The recording ended. Silence. Then I collapsed into tears. My son had reached out, had known, had feared, and nobody came. Until now. "This proves intent," Dana said. "It ties her behavior to motive. Not a full smoking gun, but enough to shake the walls." I wiped my face. "How soon can we use it?" "We attach it to the injunction hearing. Let the judge hear it privately. It'll show that Mason knew he was in danger before any psychosis appeared. They'll try to say it was paranoia." "Let them," Dana said. "Truth doesn't need to scream. It just needs to survive long enough to be heard." That night, I didn't sleep. But I didn't break either. She could slander me, bury me in lies, paint me as a ghost. But I was a mother, and ghosts don't stop knocking. The courthouse was fuller than I'd expected. A few media cameras lined the back, though the judge had forbidden live broadcasting. Reporters sat with quiet pens, waiting for drama. They didn't have to wait long. Talia entered like royalty, flanked by Sylvia Dobbins and a second man I hadn't seen before. A younger attorney, sharp suit, colder eyes, damage control in human form. She didn't look at me as she passed. Dana leaned in. They brought a forensic psychologist, probably to counter the voicemail. I nodded, barely breathing. The judge, Harold Hamlin, was a man of few words and even fewer expressions, but he was known for fairness, and that gave me hope. The hearing began with Sylvia launching into a preemptive strike. "This case is a clear example of elder confusion, amplified by grief," she said. "My client, Mrs. Carter, has been the sole caregiver for her husband during the decline of his mental health. She had to make hard decisions no wife should face. Now, facing false accusations, she stands alone while a woman long estranged from the family tries to rewrite history." Dana rose slowly. "Your Honor, what we're asking is not for sympathy. We're asking for scrutiny. For truth, for the court to examine how guardianship was granted based on a diagnosis from a single session by a doctor now under review for ethical violations." Dana played the voicemail. The room shifted. Even Judge Hamlin's brow furrowed. Sylvia tried to object. "Your Honor, the authenticity." "The court will allow it," the judge said. Then Dana presented Trevor's written testimony, the court investigator's findings, and the affidavit that bore my forged signature. For every word they spoke against me, Dana responded with paper, proof. Sylvia pushed back hard. "Martha Carter is not a credible witness. Her judgment is clearly impaired. She believes she's receiving messages through the radio. She's told neighbors her son is held hostage, language more suited for tabloids than truth." I stood up. "I never said that." The judge looked at me. "Mrs. Carter, please." "No," I said, my voice steady. "I never said those words. I said I loved my son. I said I missed him. And if that's madness now, then God help us all." A silence settled. Then Judge Hamlin spoke. "This is not a trial. It's a hearing to determine whether further legal review is warranted." "I can't." He paused, eyes scanning the room. "I find that sufficient evidence has been presented to question the legitimacy of the original guardianship. Effective immediately, Talia Carter's legal authority over Mason Carter is suspended pending full investigation. A neutral third-party guardian will be appointed." Talia gasped. Sylvia stood. "Your Honor, my ruling is final," he said, firm. "Additionally, no party may remove Mason Carter from the Ridgefield facility until this court concludes its review. Any violation will be considered obstruction." I didn't jump. I didn't cry. But my hand closed around Dana's and I whispered, "Thank you." She didn't smile. "Not yet," she said. "We've opened the door, but now we walk through it." Outside, the cameras were waiting. Dana shielded me as best she could, but I looked up just once and let them see my face. Let them see what a mother looks like when the system finally starts to listen. The building hadn't changed. Ridgefield Psychiatric and Wellness Center stood just as I remembered it from the photos. Red-bricked, surrounded by sycamore trees, deceptively peaceful. The kind of place brochures called serene. I hated it. Dana walked beside me, calm but alert. They're allowing a 15-minute observational window. No interaction, no waving, just visual confirmation. End quote. What if he doesn't recognize me? I whispered. He will. We were led by a nurse through quiet, sterile halls, every door marked with coded badges, every wall a pale, non-confrontational blue. Finally, we stopped at a reinforced glass window looking into a common area. It was quiet. 2 patients sat on a couch watching muted TV, one paced in circles, and there, in the far corner, at a table near the window, sat a man in a gray sweater. Mason. I almost didn't know him. His hair was longer, tangled, his shoulders slumped. His eyes, God, his eyes looked like they hadn't seen sunlight in years. But he was there, breathing, existing, alive. I pressed my hand gently against the glass, even though I knew he couldn't see me clearly. My voice caught in my throat. That's my son. That's my baby. And then it happened. Mason, as if drawn by instinct, looked up. His gaze swept the room slowly. Then it stopped. Right on me. He didn't move for a long moment. Then, slowly, he placed his hand on the glass, matching mine. I bit my lip to keep from sobbing. He couldn't smile, not fully, but his lips curled slightly. Just enough. I saw recognition. I saw hope. He didn't wave. He didn't speak. But in that one silent gesture, everything I feared that they'd broken him, erased me, was proven wrong. He remembered. They tapped on the glass after 15 minutes. Time's up. As we turned to leave, Mason tapped his knuckles once, just once, against the window. A code from childhood. 3 knocks meant, I'm okay. But one meant, don't give up. Back in the car, I clutched Dana's arm. I saw him, I said, voice trembling. He's in there. Dana nodded. And now we prove he deserves to be out. The legal battle wasn't over, but Mason had reached through the silence. Now it was my turn to tear it down. We met her in a parking lot behind an old diner on the edge of town. Her name was Kara Jennings, late 30s, ex-Ridgefield nurse, now working in a private clinic across state lines. She kept her coat zipped high and her voice low. I shouldn't even be talking to you, she said. But you are, Dana replied, because you know something's wrong. Kara looked at me, then away. I remember your son, Mason. Quiet, gentle. He was brought in on a Thursday. I remember because I was on shift when he arrived. What was he like? I asked. Confused, she said. Not panicked, just confused, like he didn't know where he was or why. And Dr. Hayworth? Dana pressed. She exhaled. He saw Mason for under an hour. Wrote the report that night. I thought it was fast, but it wasn't the first time. You mean he's done this before? Kara nodded. We had patients come in with guardianship petitions already in motion. Sometimes they were already medicated. Sometimes family would come in before the patient even had their clothes changed. That's illegal, Dana muttered. Kara shrugged. It's Ridgefield. The lines blur when donors are involved. Was Talia a donor? Kara didn't answer, but the look in her eyes said enough. There's more, she whispered. The intake camera footage from that day gone. Security log says it was corrupted. But I saw it. I was in the office when they played it back. Mason was calm. He wasn't violent. He asked to call his mother. My heart stopped. Did he say anything else? He said, she doesn't know I'm here. Tears threatened again. Dana handed Kara a burner phone. If anyone contacts you lawyers, hospital admin call me. Kara nodded and slipped away into the dusk. We had enough. Not for victory, but for fire. That night, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. From talia.ca.ca.pro.pro. Subject, let's talk. I stared at it for a long time. Dana was cautious. She wants to scare you, make you doubt your momentum. I want to see her, I said. I need to, not without me. The meeting was set for a cafe downtown, neutral territory. Talia walked in wearing sunglasses and a scarf, like a celebrity dodging scandal. She sat across from me, stone-faced. "Why now?" I asked. She removed her glasses slowly. "Because I know how this ends, and so do you." I leaned forward. "Then why not stop? Why fight so hard to keep him locked away?" "Because he was mine," she said flatly. "I built everything with him. And you? You gave birth to him, but I made him something. And when he wanted to walk away, he would have taken it all with him." "That was his right," I whispered. Talia's lip curled. "Not after what I sacrificed." "You didn't sacrifice. You stole." She stood, her voice cold. "Walk away, Martha, before this destroys you." Meine Start is not for the Daisning. As she turned to leave, I called after her. "You already lost." She paused. "He remembers me," I said, "and he's not afraid of you anymore." She didn't reply, but I saw the tremor in her shoulders as she walked away. For the first time, I knew she was scared. The flash drive trembled slightly in Kara's hand. "It's not much," she said. "I only copied part of it. I was scared, but I thought, maybe someday someone would need to see." Dana took the drive gently, nodding. "You did the right thing." We watched it in Dana's office, the blinds drawn tight. The footage showed the Ridgefield intake room quiet, cold. A nurse wheeled Mason in. His wrists were bound, though he wasn't resisting. He looked around, clearly confused. Then he turned to the nurse. "I didn't agree to this," he said, voice clear. "Talia told me we were going to counseling. This isn't counseling." The nurse responded, but her voice was too soft to catch. Then Mason looked up, directly at the intake camera. "If anyone sees this," he said, "please tell my mom I'm okay. Please tell her I didn't choose this." The video ended. I covered my mouth, overwhelmed. "He was lucid," Dana said. "He was aware. And now we have proof." By the next morning, Dana had filed a motion to include the footage as evidence in the guardianship reevaluation. She attached it with a full affidavit from Kara, under seal, to protect her identity. "This changes everything," she said. And it did. That afternoon, the judge issued an emergency review order, demanding Ridgefield halt all pending transfers involving Mason. "Transfers?" I asked. Dana's face tightened. "That's the other part." She handed me a document unsigned, but processed. It was a pre-approval form for patient relocation, dated 2 days before the court suspended Talia's guardianship. It listed Mason's name, his ID, and a transfer destination, West Haven Psychiatric Institute, located in Arizona. They were going to move him out of state, Dana said. Quietly, legally, before we could stop it. How is that even possible? Because until last week, Talia still had power. She signed this, and Ridgefield was willing to process it. I stared at the page, cold creeping into my spine. If we hadn't acted when we did, they'd have buried him, Dana finished. In another place, another system, one where no Oregon court could reach him. I sat down, shaking. This is why she met me, I realized. She knew we were getting close. She was trying to make me stop before this came out. Dana nodded. But now we don't stop. We expose everything. She reached into her desk and pulled out a small black folder. "Trial prep begins now," she said. "We're not just asking for guardianship to be revoked. We're pressing for damages, for perjury, for conspiracy to commit fraud." I nodded, eyes burning. "He's coming home," I whispered. Dana's eyes softened. "Yes," she said, "and they're going to pay for what they did to him." She walked into court like always composed, elegant, untouchable. But the cracks were starting to show. Talia's lawyer tried to file for dismissal of charges, citing a witch hunt born from maternal obsession. Judge Hamlin wasn't moved. "This court finds sufficient grounds for full evidentiary review," he said. "Miss Carter, you will answer the allegations under oath." Talia stood stiffly, jaw tight. Across the courtroom, Dana leaned close to me. "Watch her hands," she whispered. "She can hide her voice but not her nerves." Sure enough, as the bailiff swore her in, Talia's fingers tapped the side of the witness stand fast, uneven, anxious. Dana's cross-examination began gently. "We'd like to revisit the guardianship application dated February 3rd, 3 years ago," she said. "Can you confirm your signature?" "Yes." Talia replied. And the accompanying medical evaluation, how was it obtained? I requested a psychiatric consultation after Mason's behavior became erratic. You personally chose Dr. Hayworth? He was recommended. Dana nodded. By whom? Talia paused. I don't recall. Dana opened a folder. Doctor, Hayworth has submitted a new affidavit stating he was contacted through your firm, Carter Palmer Holdings, and paid a private consultancy fee for expedited evaluation. Talia's jaw twitched. The judge looked up sharply. Is that accurate, Miss Carter? Yes. We needed answers quickly. Dana didn't smile. Did you tell him what diagnosis to write? No. You never dime. Did you suggest what outcome would help resolve financial disagreements between you and Mason? Did you sign a facility transfer request 2 days before your guardianship was suspended? Silence. Dana stepped back. No further questions. Then it was Hayworth's turn. He looked haggard. His voice was low, tired. I made a mistake, he said. I allowed myself to be pressured. The evaluation was rushed. It did not meet clinical standards. I menaced. Were you compensated beyond standard rates? The court attorney asked. He nodded. Yes. Dana whispered. That's it. Her protection's gone. Talia sat, stone still. Outside the courtroom, word was already spreading. Headlines shifted. Whistleblower doctor turns on guardian wife. Public opinion swung again this time, not in her favor. But none of it mattered as much as what came next. The court granted me permission. A 30-minute, in-person, supervised visit with Mason. Dana and I arrived at Ridgefield that afternoon. I was trembling by the time the door opened. He sat by the window again, his hands folded, thinner than ever, but alert. When I stepped in, he looked up. Our eyes met. He didn't smile, not right away. But then his lips moved. Mom. I covered my mouth. He stood slowly, unsteady, but walked toward me. I knew you'd come, he whispered. And then he held me. Weak arms, tired limbs, but strong enough. I wept into his shoulder. 3 years. 3 stolen years. But I had him now, and I would never let him go again. The courtroom was packed, not with press or bystanders, but with silence. That heavy, expectant kind of silence that comes just before a verdict. Judge Hamlin reviewed the documents one last time. The final week had seen the entire case laid bare. The falsified documents, the forced guardianship, the attempted transfer out of state, and the breach of medical ethics. Talia sat in silence. Her lawyers had withdrawn most of their objections. Even she seemed resigned now, less furious, more empty. I didn't feel triumph, only breathless waiting. Then the gavel fell. This court finds that the original guardianship agreement granted to Mrs. Talia Carter was obtained through unethical and fraudulent means. The petition is hereby revoked, effective immediately. A murmur swept the room. The court further recommends formal investigation into criminal charges, including medical fraud, conspiracy, and perjury. The Oregon State Board of Psychology is advised to review the conduct of Dr. Kenneth Hayworth. I couldn't breathe. But the judge wasn't done. Mason Carter will be transferred to an independent psychiatric evaluation facility within the next 72 hours, under oversight of the Oregon Department of Health. A new care plan will be developed based on nonpartisan review. Mrs. Martha Carter is hereby granted supervised visitation rights immediately, with review for expanded access in 30 days. The gavel fell again. It was over. I didn't cry, not there. Not yet. Dana squeezed my hand. You did it, she whispered. No, I said. We did. As we walked out, people stood not clapping, not cheering, just standing. Some nodded, some simply watched. It wasn't fame. It was recognition. That justice, quiet, grinding, imperfect justice, had moved. Mason was waiting in a holding room with 2 nurses. He looked tired, but clearer. His posture was straighter. When he saw me, he smiled. Real, wide, unmistakable. I heard, he said softly. I love you, I whispered. He touched my hand through the glass. I never stopped waiting. I choked on my tears. And finally, I let them fall. It was late spring when he came home. Not for good, just for a weekend. But after 3 years, 2 courts, and a war of silence, Even a weekend felt like a lifetime. Mason stepped out of the transport van slowly, flanked by a care coordinator. He looked around the front yard like it was a memory flickering back to life. The azaleas were blooming. The old maple tree still leaned over the porch, and I stood at the door, just as I had so many times when he was a teenager, waiting for him to come back from school. Only this time, I was older. And he was broken but healing. "Smells the same," he said, smiling faintly as he stepped up. "I made your favorite," I replied. "Pot roast, extra garlic." He laughed. We sat on the porch for hours that evening. No pressure, no heavy questions, just light conversation, books, music, memories of his father. He asked about neighbors. I showed him the new birdhouse. And then, as the sky turned lavender, he said quietly, "I knew I wasn't crazy, you know. Even when they tried to convince me, I knew something was wrong." I didn't interrupt. "I stopped fighting after a while," he continued. "Not because I believed them, but because I thought no one was coming." I reached for his hand. "I never stopped coming," I said, "even when I didn't know where to go." He nodded, eyes misting. "You saved me, Mom." "No," I said. "We saved each other." It's gone to his Avari 4. That night, I tucked a blanket around him as he lay on the old living room couch, the one he'd refused to get rid of in college. "I'm not tired," he mumbled. "You're safe," I replied. "You can rest now." He did. For the first time in years, he slept. Soundly, without meds, without fear. Just a man wounded, but free in the home where he belonged. Sometimes justice doesn't look like a gavel. It looks like a porch light left on for too many nights. Like a son who remembers. And a mother who never forgets. This story is a testament to the quiet power of perseverance and a mother's unwavering love. It teaches us that justice may be slow and truth may be buried, but they are never beyond reach. In a world where appearances can deceive and systems can fail, it is the persistence of ordinary people, especially those dismissed as too old, too emotional, or too late, that can bend reality back toward what's right. Sometimes, healing begins not with a court ruling, but with someone simply refusing to give up.